Welcome to Spaghettimoon's Introduction to Materials. This tutorial aims to get you get the complete beginner good grounding in materials. So what is a material? First of all, you shouldn't really take the meaning of the word too literally. For example, my shirt is the material of my shirt is made from nylon or cotton or whatever, and this is what consists, or it actually is made from. A 3D material alters the way an object surface appears to consist of. So the definition is different and the same in that kind of way, but I'm sure you'll understand by the end of this tutorial anyway. So what defines a material? Well, let's go to the Materials tab in Blender. You can press F5 or click this little sphere here, and you've got these two that pop up. So let's create a new material by clicking this Add New here. And you can see the material pops up. Okay, first up we've got our preview panel right over here. In fact, we won't be using this much at all, so let's just zoom in a bit. And this displays what our material should look like. Although previews are not always particularly accurate, they still are very useful for making small alterations. And next up we've got a material panel which deals with the naming and the actual colour of our material. It's also got the ramps tab, and we'll cover that in another tutorial because that really does need it. I need quite a lot of time to explain those. And you can change the alpha as well, which is the transparency, and let's choose a nice colour for the material. In fact, let's get rid of that and add a sphere. And you can add specific materials by going to this rollout instead of adding a new one, and since this one's already been created, we just go straight back to that one. Let's move that. Okay. Next door we've got a panel where we can further along we've got our shading and mirror, the mirror transparency. That kind of deals with reflections. We won't go into that in this tutorial. What we are interested in is this shader panel. Your shading panel contains the shaders, surprisingly, and it's these shaders that dictate how a material actually appears. There are two shaders you can use, one for the diffuse, which is here, and one for the specular, which is below it. Diffuse actually means to become spread or scattered and spread out. This is directly relevant to the application of it in our 3D environment. The diffuse shader basically affects how the material absorbs and spreads the light around it onto the material itself. We start off with Lambert, which is a fairly standard multi-purpose shader with only one parameter, which is the reflection. And you can see if you alter that, it becomes a lot darker. If you reflect it, it'll become sort of a lot brighter. I'll just leave it as default setting for now. And after that, you've got Oranea, which is much more versatile and natural looking shader. It's good for making something like skin. It has an extra roughness parameter which I think deals with the microscopical roughness of a surface, and if you up that, it'll affect the roughness, and you've got the reflection parameter here again. And after that you've got the toon shader, which is, despite having all the most options to alter it, it's actually pretty simple. If I have to zoom out so you can see that, if I do that, it's you've got the size and the smooth. The size deals with how big the lighted area is, and it makes the shadowed area smaller. And the smooth parameter deals with how hard the transition is. If I had it right down, whoops, I had that up and I had that right down, you see it's a very hard line defining it. If you put it up, it's a lot softer. And finally there's a Minette, I think that's how you pronounce it, I'm not entirely sure, which is similar to Lambert. It can be used to create metally materials. It's often used on car bodies, and its extra parameter here, which is dark parameter, it darkens parts of the surface that point away from the camera or the light source, which makes it specifically good for metally types of surfaces. Now we move on to specular, The specular shader affects the specular values of our material, but what is specularity? Well, everything has a specular value pretty much, but in hugely varying amounts. The best example I can think of right now is maybe some water or a polished metal object. If you notice the hard whiteness where the light hits the object and reflects it the hardest, then it's kind of a white highlight, which is the specular. Like diffuse specular has different ways of displaying the shader, and here you can affect the level of specularity, which is consistent throughout all of the shaders. And with Cooktorrent, Cooktor even, I think this is Blender's oldest shader, and the hardest setting does exactly what it says and changes how hard the specular actually is. So if you have it really hard, you have a really sharp little dot. If you had it quite low, you've got quite a lot with a smooth transition. We'll go on to the other one, Fong, which is another odd shader. It's very similar to Cooktorrent. You get pretty much the same effect, though a small variation. Berlin is a very good and versatile shader. It's meant to create more realistic materials, similar to the Oronea diffuse shader. It has specularity and hardness, and also a refraction. I think that stands for, it's actually the index of refraction. It doesn't really deal with the physical refraction of photons unless you're using a ray tracer, and that would be different settings, I think. It deals more with the intensity of the specular highlight, so if you put it up, it becomes a lot more intense. And after that we've got Toon, which is pretty much the same as our Toon shader and diffuse. You've got all the same size and smooth. And Woodiso, that's good for creating polished or plastic looking materials with its RMS value. I'm not entirely sure what that stands for, but I'm sure a little search on Google will sort that out. Below you've got a few extra parameters. Transitioning affects the diffuse of the back faces, ambient affects the global ambient colour material receives, and the emit affects how much light the material actually emits, like so it's a lot lighter. But it doesn't actually emit physically, it just affects the material itself and not the scene. You have to add more lights if you wanted to do that. Next to our shaders we've got the texture panel, which we'll go into in another tutorial because that doesn't directly concern materials, even though it is in the same panel. We'll take another tutorial to go into depth on textures. And if we render out a quick one now with Woodiso and Mina, we'll see if which is very different from using just say if we had a new material and gave it a horrible grey colour, a little lambert and a Fong maybe with a low specular. What's going on? Oh, I forgot the emit. And we've got a clinical looking object. You can see the difference that materials can make is huge. And that's pretty much it on the basics of materials. I hope you feel more comfortable with them now, and thanks for watching.